United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight. We will start out with the roll call, please.
Mayor Nicholson.
Here.
Vice Mayor Sanger.
Here.
Councilmember Durst.
Here.
Espinoza. Martinez.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Wells.
Here.
Okay. Hello, Louis. All right, so we have a quorum here. Before we get started, I can hear somebody's alarm going off behind me out the back window if anybody in here is parked this direction. All right, so we'll start out here with citizens participation, and this is a chance for anybody in the audience to have 5 minutes to speak about anything that's not on tonight's agenda. Is there anybody that'd like to speak? Go ahead, Devari.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I was approached by Frank Lucero. Frank Lucero is a person that his wife has been going through dialysis, using a dialysis machine and having to do a lot of traveling. And he's done a lot of work in trying to find out how or if we could get a clinic started in Rawlins. He's talked to a number of doctors. They have written real nice letters about it. It's my understanding, and I heard tonight, that the hospital has been talking about this for some time. I guess it's not a really easy thing to do because you have to have some pretty sophisticated equipment to get it done. But I guess my thinking is this is more of a something to let him know that I personally think that it's something that we should have in Rawlins, and that this council should get on board and maybe ask the staff or someone to write a letter, send it to the hospital saying that we're in favor of trying to put a clinic together and get something going. I know of at least 5 people in this community, some that have already passed, that were on a dialysis, and it's a hardship to them to have to travel in this kind of weather to get to the doctors. So it's something that I strongly support, and I thank Frank for all the work that he's done getting this information. I turned this information over to Myra, and she's going to look at it and do something with it. But
Okay.
thank you.
Councilwoman Smith.
I would just like to provide some information on that in that regard. I think about 3 years ago, I did work with Frank Lucero. We took what he had to economic development, and she had visited with the hospital. She had gone to one of the clinics in Casper. She learned all of the steps that you have to have for phlebotomists. You have to train a phlebotomist. You have to have a doctor who will oversee the clinic. We located some property that could be involved in it, so a lot of groundwork had been done. But as things go along, our economic development director has gone, and that's the setting there on the table. So there has been some footwork done on it, but I think it's a little bit more than just opening up a shop and having somebody take blood. So there's you have to work with the medical departments.
Well, my thinking was it's something in line of some of the doctors that are coming to the community now. If you have a heart specialist comes in out of Casper and go up to the hospital, you have a visit with them, but there's not a lot of equipment in it. They got their computer there, they put a bunch of information in, and they work like that. But apparently having a dialysis center like this takes some heavy equipment, some really sophisticated equipment to get it done. Having said that, my thinking is that I think that maybe if this council would like, and I don't know if we have to put it on the agenda, or just ask the staff to write a letter and bring it before the council next time and get it on the agenda then, and then send a letter off to somebody, either I would think the hospital would be the hospital board, or somebody would where you'd send it to, I don't know.
At one point in time, they talked about putting some rooms together so they could do that. So I do support that project. It's just that it's stalled and we haven't been able to make it go. Plus, the thing is, after the first year, it is self-supporting from insurance and Medicare. It's just that it's staff intensive and you have to have the exact professionals. And so there's a lot of things you have to put together on it, but it's a very worthy project.
Yeah.
So just throwing that out.
But just the fact that we had a couple of doctors that were interested in it and wrote some letters in support of this project. So if next meeting we could get maybe the staff to put a letter together and then bring it on to the council floor, and then we could make a motion that we agree that this is a worthy project and send it over to the hospital.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Any other comments from council or anybody in the audience who would like to speak? Okay. We'll move on down to city council reports. First item we have is Board of Adjustments. I have nothing to report there. Next item is COG, and I have nothing to report there.
Mayor, we can provide a brief update for
Okay, yeah, I forgot you guys were there at that one. I'll back up.
On July 15th, 2020, would you like me to go?
Yeah, would you please?
Honorable Mayor, members of council, myself and Dustin Zebold attended the COG meeting in Bags on July 15th, 2020. They held elections. The current chair, or the newly elected chair of COG, remains Morgan Irene of Elk Mountain. Vice chair-elect is John Nelson, town of Saratoga. And Secretary Treasurer remains Travis Moore of Carbon County. Additionally, the Wyoming Department of Transportation provided a stiff presentation outlining their projects for the next 5- and 10-year period with some decreases, drastic decreases in funding, and some projects that have been either delayed or killed, for lack of a better, nicer word. Additionally, and they do have a presentation. If you would like us to email that to you, we'd be happy to get that email to you. We also had the Carbon County Deputy Planner present, who talked about the floodplain revisions, and there are a number of changes. I believe staff is going to be working on getting notification to those property owners who are not currently in the floodplain zone, who will then be in the floodplain zone, and those requirements will be applicable to them. Additionally, Kara Choquette of our company of Wyoming presented an update. It sounds as if the Joint Revenue Committee will be taking up the issue of wind taxation again at their meeting in August. She requested a letter of support from COG. Additionally, she asked for testimony from COG and requested that each of the municipalities consider a letter of support and having someone available to testify for those for that meeting, and she would provide the dates of those meetings. COG did approve a letter of support, and they were going to provide, one of their 3 members or officers was going to provide testimony, and so it's up to the City of Rawlins if you wish to provide a letter of support and then provide someone to testify on behalf of that.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate you guys going for that. Next item is DDA Main Street, Councilwoman Smith.
They had a meeting. I was not present, and so I have no report for this evening. Thank you.
We'll move on down to Rawlins Planning Commission, Councilman Espinoza.
Yes, Mayor, Nick, council members, nothing to report.
Okay, thank you, Louis. We'll move on down to Urban Systems Committee, Councilman Sanger.
We have nothing new to report. We will be having a meeting, though, on August 19th.
Okay. All right, we'll move on down to the approval of the minutes of July 7th regular meeting. Councilwoman Wells.
I motion to approve the City Council regular meeting minutes of July 7, 2020 as presented.
Okay, can you get a second?
So second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Is there any objections to the motion that was made? If not, Jerry, would you open online voting, please?
Online voting is closed and the motion carries with 6 yeas and Councilmember Espinoza abstaining.
Okay. We'll move on down to department monthly reports. Are there any questions on the reports? Okay. We'll move on down to the approval of the agenda. Councilman Martinez?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented if there are no corrections or amendments.
Okay.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any objections to that motion that was made? Okay. Sherry, would you open online voting, please? Councilman Martinez?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented if there are no corrections or amendments.
Okay. Okay. We have a first and a second. Any objections to that motion that was made? Okay. Sherry, would you open online voting, please?
Online voting is closed and the motion carries with 7 yeas.
All right, thank you, Sherry. Now move on down to the approval of the payroll. Councilman Sanger?
I move to approve June 21st, 2020 through July 4th, 2020 payroll register for $243,582.77.
We need a second. Councilwoman Wells?
Second.
You beat you, Louis. All right, so we have a first and a second. Is there any objections to that motion that was made? Sherry, would you open online voting, please?
Online voting is closed and the motion carries with 7 yeas.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll move on down to the approval of accounts payable. Councilwoman Smith?
I move to approve the accounts payable register for the period of July 1st, 2020 to July 17th, 2020, in the amount of $795,189.15.
We need a second?
Second.
Louis, we got you. We have a first and a second. Is there any objections to that motion that was made?
So are we taking Espinoza or Wells?
Espinoza.
You can have this one.
So if there's no objections to that motion, would you open online voting, please?
Online voting is closed and the motion carries with 7 yeas.
All right, thank you. Now move on down to approval of Verizon wireless agreement. You have a motion? Councilman Sanger?
I move to approve the lease agreement with Verizon Wireless to construct a cell site and a tower behind Fire Station 1 at 320 West Walnut.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Councilwoman Smith is the second on that. John, would you like to fill us in?
Absolutely. Mr. Mayor, Council, good evening. I'll give you a little background information. This agreement's been worked on since around 2017. Verizon Wireless approached the City of Rawlins about the possibility of building a tower of cell site on city property. We looked at it and the concept came up to possibly construct it behind Fire Station 1. It was appealing to the fire department because we have some communication issues and it's directly related to antennas and antenna height. So the discussions went back and forth. Finally, a conditional use permit was sought and it was approved by Planning Commission and approved by the City Council. Two things that are advantageous to us is obviously the communications for emergency services. Plus Verizon Wireless will pay the City of Rawlins $12,000 for the land use agreement. So that's where we're at. Just waiting for the land use agreement and the approval by the council.
Okay. Any questions for John? Okay, if there's no questions for John and no objections to the motion, Sherry, would you open online voting, please?
Online voting is closed and the motion carries with 7 yeas.
Thank you, John. Appreciate this. It's been a long time coming to try to get that wrapped up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll move on down to item D, the landfill waiver for 2,222 East Cedar Street. Make a motion. Councilman Sanger?
I move to approve the landfill waiver to be determined for landscaping beautification of the Days Inn or Pleasure.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Danielle?
Honorable Mayor and City Council, at the last meeting, Matul, the new owner of the Magnuson Hotel, came to you guys under citizens' participation with a letter that is attached to your agenda requesting either a fee waiver or reduction for his property. Leroy actually went over there for me to look at it and met with Matul. There's a large amount of, right now it's mixed dirt, green waste, metal, concrete. So I kind of have to put it in both ways. If they don't sort the material, we're estimating that the landfill fees will be about $5,000. They have agreed to sort it to the best of their ability. If they do that, we're estimating they will drop it down to about $3,000 because metal and limbs and branches would be free of charge at the landfill, so they would just be charged the $45 per ton for the concrete and the dirt. They will have some struggles sorting it because it's just all kind of mushed in one pile right now. But even if they do that, again, the best they can, it will help. So it's hard to judge what the exact fees will be. But they are looking for some relief, either a waiver of the fees or a partial reduction.
Councilman West?
I can't remember the last, how much we had
It was half of whatever.
The last one that you guys did was 109 West Hugus, which was a dangerous building, and you granted half of the bill up to $1,750, which was half of what staff's estimate was. And that project has been completed and it was slightly under what staff estimated, so, but that was the last one.
Councilman Martinez?
You know, my thinking is that this piece of property is gonna be a business and it's something that we can use in our community. I wouldn't have any problems with saying $1,500, half of what you're asking for. If that's fair, I don't know, that's just something that that's what we did with the other person, we gave her half. And so I think that would be a good number to put in.
Councilman Smith?
I guess my worry, I want to help, but on the other hand, if we do this for this business, then they're setting precedent and we will have to do it for anyone else who comes in and asks. So I'm kind of struggling with that. I guess I don't know where to go to get my answer.
And I do think that our requests have increased, it seems like, for fee waivers for the landfill. But ultimately, it is whatever you guys would like to do.
I guess it's for the betterment of the community then to do this and clean up buildings. But I thought it would be for folks who really don't have the revenues and we have a problem. They don't have the revenue, so we help them out. And I suppose these days with businesses, it's starting to get going too. But on the other hand, I want to make sure we're not putting ourselves where we're going to be involved.
Just a minute, Dustin, DeBarry was ahead of you.
I guess my thinking too is that we have a program that we got a program that already allows for us to collect money, and we put this money in this abandoned building, dangerous building fund. If there's money in the account, that would make a difference whether we can help somebody or not when they come before us. I mean, if there's not enough money in there, then we just can't do it. But we'd like this program to work for itself. If there's $3,000 in that fund and we give them 15, then we still have 15, and hopefully down the road we can collect some money and add to that. That's the way it was supposed to work.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, if we don't have the money, we just can't do it. But if there's money in that fund, we should be able to Go ahead and give them a hand with $1,500.
Aaron, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm in support of doing the 50% as well. What, I couldn't hear, how was the original motion put forward?
It was just a motion to approve fee waiver, the no amount.
Okay.
Yeah, so we just have to amend it if somebody wanted to put in a dollar amount. Councilwoman Smith?
I'll make the motion to amend the motion by inserting $1,500 for up to $1,500 for the landscaping beautification.
I'll second that.
Okay. We have a first and a second.
So, perhaps motion. And may I, just for clarification for myself, because I will be calling Matul tomorrow, is it up to the 15, is it half of the cost, up to 15, or just 1,500, just so I'm clear?
I think it's half of the cost if they separate it themselves, which is $3,000, so it would be $1,500.
So if it comes in under like before, we're just doing half. I just, again, wanted to make sure, so when I relay that, I'm properly telling you. Thank you.
Do you want me to withdraw my motion then? Because I wanted up to, not to exceed $1,500.
Right, it would just be 50%, not more, not to exceed the 1,500, correct? Okay.
Is that what you meant?
To amend it.
Oh, okay.
So if I make two motions, it's moved to
And
amend.
I agree with that.
Okay, I just, like I said, I wanted to make sure I was understanding.
So we still have two motions on the floor. So,
The original plus the amendment, if that's the amendment.
Right.
And the other one passes.
correct. Correct. Understanding that we have two
Oh, okay.
on the floor.
So we're just voting on the amendment.
Right. So is there any, yes, we did get a second. So if there's no further questions, then we'll go ahead and open the online voting on the second motion.
Mine's not popping up.
No, we're still waiting. They're playing catch up right now,
Oh,
Aaron.
sorry.
No problem, Aaron.
Thank you for that.
Should be there now, Aaron
Oh, there it is.
and Louis.
Online voting is closed and the motion carries with 7 yeas.
Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on down to item E, a resolution authorize enrollment in WIO warrant. Can we get a motion? Councilman Wells?
I move to approve the resolution authorizing staff to enroll in WIO.
Okay, can we get a second? Councilman second? Okay. Danielle?
Honorable Mayor and City Council, at the June 2nd meeting, Michelle Christopher with Wyoming Association of Rural Water presented to you guys the WIO Warren program. At that time, there was also a couple members of staff present that also voiced that they were in favor of the program. We do think this would be a great opportunity for the City of Rawlins. It's a mutual aid program for our utility systems across Wyoming. Since that time, I have worked with Amy to make sure that she had time to review all of the documents in the agreement, and she's good with it, so we would like to proceed with enrollment of that. I did do a resolution just to kind of make it a little more formal tonight for the approval, but if you guys have questions, let me know.
Any questions for Danielle? Okay, if there's no questions, then you go ahead and open online voting, please.
think that's a very good program to be involved in.
Yes,
It'll be the benefit from it at some point.
yes, I agree. And hopefully, if we can help somebody, we'll do that too.
Online voting is closed and motion carries with 7 yeas.
Now we'll move on down to item F, the approval of source water protection plan. Can we get a motion on that? Councilman Zena? I move to approve and adopt the source water protection plan dated June 2020 as presented.
Councilwoman Smith seconds that. Danielle?
Honorable Mayor and City Council, this item was brought to you guys in a work session where we did go through it with Eric with Engineering Associates. This plan is really, if we adopt it tonight, it's going to be kind of a guide for staff to move forward and to be able to implement some things that'll help protect our water system. It'll also give us the ability to continue working with the Wyoming Water Development Commission so that we can hopefully obtain some funding, work towards ultimately repairing our entire line coming into Rawlins and getting that upgraded. We still do, as you guys know, have some wood stave pipeline that we would love to upgrade. It's definitely outlived or has exceeded its life. We're thankful for, but so this project or this plan will just kind of help us move forward in the right direction.
This was also to protect our springs, is that correct?
Correct, yes. Yep, it would be protecting our springs as well as working towards some funding to help upgrade those and to further protect them.
And the other question was, did we talk a little bit about cost? What it would, would they pick a particular project that they would work on and then bring that information to us, that we would agree on the cost?
Can we pick the project?
So, there's a couple projects in here that are quite a bit smaller. Fencing was considerably less than the whole rehab. We have the ability to do that project in phases too, where we could go in and start replacing some spring boxes. Over time, we could start replacing lines rather than doing the whole project. The whole project is estimated at, and it's in there, I believe it was 4.5 million. Give or take, I'd have to pull the exact number. So obviously that's a good chunk of money. However, this plan is really the step one. We could also go further in our planning to work with the Wyoming Water Development Commission to help get a lot of that funding to help pay for that too. So that the city wasn't on the hook for the $4.5 million.
A lot of it would be that we apply for funding from the state, is that correct?
Correct, yes.
So the other thing was then you'll break it down in phases and bring one project to us and say, this is what we're gonna be doing this summer and this summer.
Yes, you guys will definitely know moving forward how we proceed. Even if we are able to obtain state funding, we'll definitely need to have it in the budget to do the city match portion of that. So you guys, we will keep you posted as we proceed through this.
Councilwoman Smith?
We're trying to pay off all of our long-term debt. And as I said before, water is probably the thing that we have to make sure that we have and that we protect it for recovery. But I also, as we go along, I have a concern about racking up too long-term debt. And so I think that's what I'm going to be looking at. I know we need it, we need to protect it. But also I think we want to encourage people to even look at some of the federal funding too that they have for resources.
Yes, I agree. And I think we could do a big portion of it with grant funding. And then we can choose as the city to either do matching funds for that grant or a loan program. We're not tied to, it's not going to kick us out if we don't do the loan program to get the federal grant money. So.
Any more questions for Danielle? Okay, if there's no objections to the motion that was made, Sherry, would you open online voting, please?
Online voting is closed and the motion carries with 7 yeas.
Now we'll move on down to item G, the 2020 street project, full street section rebuild. Need a motion? Councilman Zane?
I move to award the 2020 street project full street section rebuild STC Construction in the amount of $540,000. I'll try that again, $540,025.60.
I'm gonna second that.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Danielle?
Honorable Mayor and City Council, we did put this project out to bid. We received two responsive bidders, STC Construction and 71 Construction. Staff is recommending to award the bid to STC because they were the lowest bidder. The streets being rebuilt would be Delta Street, Delta Court, Lambda Drive, Inverness Boulevard, just that section in front of the pepper mill that will tie in nicely to Edinburgh, which will hopefully get done next year, and then Dunfell Street as well. This is, and the next project is also a streets award, but the combined total, they are under budget for these projects. And if you have questions, let me know.
Any questions for Diane? Councilman Singer?
There's a large dollar amount differential between the two of them on both bids.
Yes.
Is there something we're missing here?
STC historically has always been considerably less. I'm not sure how they do business, but he does not change order us to death, or at least has not in the past. In fact, on one of the projects we did last year, he was considerably less and still came in under budget.
If there's no more questions, Sherry, would you open online voting, please?
Online voting is closed and motion carries with 6 yeas and Mayor Nicholson abstaining.
Okay. And we'll move on down to item H, the bid award of 2020 street projects in Mill and Overlay. Can I get a motion, Councilman Singer?
I move to award the 2020 street project mill and overlay to STC Construction in the amount of $454,307.60.
Second.
Linda beat you, Louis. All right, so we have a first and second. Danielle?
So we received 3 bids for this project. We received STC, Lewis & Lewis, and 71 Construction. Again, staff is recommending the award to STC Construction because they were the lowest responsive bidder. And again, we kind of merged those. Both of these projects are under budget for a total streets capital project.
How much under budget for both projects?
$205,666.80. Yes.
So during the budget discussions, we had talked about doing $1 million out of general fund for streets work and then $200,000 out of impact assistance. We did, I believe, 2 additional streets as add-ons in the event the bids came in low enough. Those are
They're being done.
they're in here,
Yeah.
and we're still only hitting the million. So what my plan would be is to sit back on the impact assistance because to try to go back out to bid for another 200,000 in streets is tough. So what we would do is we would roll that into maybe next year and be able to put a little more and do a little more aggressive add-ons to ensure we can hit the full number. Because we weren't fully expecting this to happen.
Yeah.
So, but we're able in this 2 sets of approvals to get a significant number of streets done. We will also be attacking Edinburgh Development next spring. And then throughout the budget process, we'll be able to put another group of streets together to try to knock some of these out and get as many of these done as we can, as quick as we can, so.
Which ones were the add-ons?
Wyoming and Gallup. So with this project, we'll be milling and overlaying East Miller, Gallup, Wyoming Street, and then a part of Colorado Street. It's just the 1 block, and then there's a block section of Colorado that's a rebuild. We put it in this package instead of the rebuild though, because they tie together.
Councilman Smith?
And I assume we have the security bond.
Yes.
Councilman Martinez?
I do have a question in regard to, and I support the motion. I guess my question is if there's any funds left over, I would like you to take a look at extending that Davis Street, tying the Cottonwood Village into the community so that the kids can go from Cottonwood Village down Davis to go to the park instead of having to travel all the way around.
Davis or Miller?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
I think that when I text you, it doesn't matter if it's gonna be Miller or Davis. Davis is probably the closest to the park and the shortest amount of work to be done. Miller's a
We
little
did-
bit longer.
Yeah, Miller is the shorter of the two, and we did do a draft, kind of rough draft plan for that with the cost estimate that I did send you. I don't have anything prepared for Davis,
Okay, well, that's fine.
so, but in
It
this,
doesn't matter. The Miller would work fine. It's just that, years ago, and the way this started was years ago, we paid, Mr. Forsman, who happened to be the manager of Casper, to come to Rawlins and talk to us in a seminar about tying your communities together and adding streets where they should be and different things. And so it just stayed in my mind all the time that that Cottonwood Village kind of sits out by itself, and that it should be brought into our community so that these people can enjoy some of the benefits that the community gets. And that's how it started.
Yeah, so, I know we had this discussion, a little while back. One of the things I also wanna make sure we do before we get into this, I want Carl and the public works staff to look at traffic. Because I don't wanna put us in a position where we open the wrong road up, being on a turn, and cause more traffic issues because we open that road up. So we are looking at this, and it is a priority item, to open that up and to combine communities. But we also wanna make sure if we're gonna do that, we do the right street, and we do it in the right location, and do it as safe as possible, because when you start getting on a turn like that, you gotta be very careful with traffic flows and things like that.
I can tell you that prior to this, several years ago, it was just a dirt road. People would just drive right through there, and then, somebody, and I'm not sure, I'm not gonna name him, decided that they ought to put a barricade there and just make it a dead end. So you got a dead end on Davis, you got a dead end on Miller with some barricades, with some signs saying that you can't cross, which they're going around these barricades anyway with their motorcycles and things.
Yeah, so we just wanna make sure we do our due diligence before we.
So anyway, it's something that was used before, and so I just wanted to keep working on it. It takes a long time. Thank you.
I guess my concern, as I remember the conversation from years ago, Tabari, was that we had some neighbors in those two areas that were opposing us putting in through streets. And so I think it is a great idea to be able to do a traffic study there and make sure the people there want it.
Yes, so, and again, I'm not opposing the idea. I do think it has some good qualities to it that we need to research, but I wanna make sure we go
And
through
there was some
all
work
the
done,
right
there was
channels.
some work done to it. There was a petition in the neighborhood, it was signed by the neighbors, and everybody was in agreement, not everybody, but the majority was in agreement to extend that street. And so, then it just died right there, and I just thought this would be a good time to bring it up.
Well, and if this issue were just not take shape,
Yeah.
it's gonna be for reasons like a traffic study, the neighbors being opposed to it and things like that, and we will communicate that back to you. But I wanna make sure we go across all of our proper channels.
More
and make
due
sure-
diligence on it.
Yes, so, and regardless of what the outcome is, you're gonna understand fully why the outcome is what it is. So if we can just be given a little bit of time, and I don't think we have time in this construction season, I don't think yet. But maybe we'll look at next summer as that being one of the projects we add on. So,
I'm still around, that'll be the third year. We'll still work on it. Thank you.
alright,
Thank you, Chris. Any more questions for Danielle? Okay, Sherry, would you open online voting, please?
online voting is closed and the motion carries with 6 yeas and Mayor Nicholson abstaining.
Thank you. Now move on down to item I, a request to authorize Gene Grable to proceed with development without applying the rules of Rawlins Municipal Code Title 16. Can I get a motion, please? Councilwoman Smith?
I move to authorize staff and applicant to proceed with the development without applying the requirements of Title 16 or.
Can I get a second? Second. Okay, I have a first and a second. Discussion.
Honorable Mayor and Council, I'm actually planning on kind of turning the floor over to Mr. Grabo to talk to you guys, but I did just want to let you guys know I had emailed Title 16 to you, and then I did put a copy of Title 16 and 19 in the packet for you, as well as some information from Jay. I was gonna just kind of hang out in case you have any specific questions for myself in regards to this project, but otherwise I was going to let Jay talk to you guys.
Okay. Councilwoman Smith?
What is the staff recommendation?
Staff would recommend that Mr. Grabo go through the variance process pursuant to Title 16 and that it would apply to his development. He is wanting to do a RV park, which is a permitted use. The reason that staff feels that Title 16 applies is because in multiple spots it refers to camping parks. It never defines RV parks. But it does define camping park, which is similar to an RV park. And then under 16.16.020, it says any person desiring to operate a manufactured or mobile home park or a RV park shall make written application for license on forms provided by the zoning officer. Prior to the issuance of the license, the park shall be inspected and the city determine compliance with the provision of this title. So it's staff belief that it would apply. Staff does, we also agree with Jay that Title 16 is messy. It's merged mobile home parks with RV or camping parks, where the two are very different, and we will be working on this. My timeline will probably to start working on this and doing research is going to be this winter once we get some of the projects with Public Works done. And I actually have the time to commit to it. So I do agree that there's issues, but it is our recommendation. If he were to go through the variance process, it does say that the variance would come to city council. And it's kind of vague. Staff is also recommending that he would have to do the 300-foot buffer in the public notice just to ensure that down the road, the project was never questioned by somebody that could potentially claim they weren't provided legal notice.
Councilwoman Wells?
Can I ask legal
Yes.
sort of opinion on the matter? Thank you, Councilmember Wells. The city's staff's recommendation is the position that the city attorney recommends as well. We believe that the applicant should comply with Chapter 16 of the Rawlins Municipal Code, where their staff has indicated that they will work to separate out the RV parks from the traditional mobile home, manufactured home parks, I think is a great idea. In the meantime, you've had a number of you've had at least one developer that has complied with the requirements of Title 16 and has been able to do it successfully and economically. And I would caution the council, we do not want to entertain a situation where we have an equal protection claim down the road where someone was required to fulfill the requirements of Title 16 or Chapter 16 and the next applicant wasn't. While that request was never, to my knowledge, brought before the council, in this instance, variance is specific and provides not only the applicant with the ability to approach the council for a variance from those strict requirements, it also provides the notice to all the abutting and neighboring structures and property owners so that they have an opportunity to come before this council and object or indicate why they don't believe the council should remove a specific requirement or not. In this instance, the grounds for granting a variance under Chapter 16 are pretty laid out, where the city council finds that extraordinary hardships or practical difficulties may result from strict compliance with this title or the purposes of this title may be served to a greater extent by an alternative proposal. It may approve variances to this title so that substantial justice may be done and the public interest secured. If the variance does not have the effect of nullifying the intent and purpose of this title, the city council shall not approve the variances unless it finds based upon the evidence presented to it in each specific case. And then it gives you 3 requirements for each finding in that variance. So there are opportunities for a developer to approach the council to seek a remedy in not requiring with a strict application. However, those variance requirements are placed on the owner in that it can't be as a result of the developer's actions, and that it has to be in harmony with the current neighborhood and structures, and that granting the variance is the least alternative to him having the reasonable use of his property. In this instance, for the council to disregard the requirements of these park processes clearly would be your authority if you want to move forward and draft an ordinance removing them completely. This council has that authority. I think there's been some great enforcement of the codes and ensuring that the development is done according to all applicable codes, fire standards, electrical codes, that you are ensuring the safety of those applicants through potable water, through safety requirements, because there's special circumstances for individuals with these properties so close together that it requires some diligence on the part of the city. But while I am not the attorney for the planning and zoning, as the city attorney, my recommendation that I do not support the request.
Thank you. Captain Martinez?
And I guess you answered my question, so that's good. My thinking was that, because I support the project, and I visited with Mr. Grable quite a while last year, even, we talked about it, visited about what he was trying to do. I think that what I was gonna do was ask that we waive this Title 16, but the way you explained it, he'll be able to go through the variance board. Is that correct? And then he'll get a decision. Then he also has the right to come back to the council.
Actually, he will present under Title 16, the variance is submitted to the council. So you would act as the administrative judge in that instance. You would take testimony, hear the request, and weigh whether or not to grant a specific variance. And so he would have to identify the requirements and which variances he's requesting for that variance and why. Maybe it's a peculiar lot. Maybe there's a high pressure gas line running. So there are a number of things that could be present on the property that would justify the variance. But as the trier of fact, we don't really want you to get into the specifics of the variance request, because you will be hearing that if the council decides not to approve this tonight. He can then present a variance back to this council.
That's what I was saying. He'll still have that right to come back before this council or the next council, whatever.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Councilman Smith?
What are we looking at for a timeline for this project to go through a variance process?
So Jay would be required to complete an application for a variance. We are asking that he obtain the signatures within 300 feet of the property, which I have already prepared for him, so he does have that list. And then all I would have to do at that point is I would do a public hearing at council, which requires 15-day notice, and I could get it on the next council agenda. Whatever, and it kind of depends when he would get his signatures and his full application to me. And then how I would plan on presenting it to you guys, I would have one public hearing for the entire application, but I would present to you guys each individual variance one at a time, so that if you chose to approve some of them, you could, or deny others, it would be a little bit cleaner. But really, like I said, the big thing would be just getting that 15-day publication out for the public hearing that would happen at the council meeting.
So basically looking at 2 calendar weeks from now.
Yes. And that's, again, assuming, if Jay does take a little bit longer getting signatures, or I did talk to him as well. In the past, we've worked with people, instead of him going door to door, I would work to draft up a letter that he could send out to the people in that area, and then wait for them to send it back. It's really, I'm willing to work with Jay, so it's really what he would like to do, and that'll kind of depend or change the timeline a little bit.
And you are putting this on your basket list to clean this up?
Yes, I definitely have already a lot of things in mind, but I'd like to do some research to see what other communities are doing and what's worked for them and what hasn't. And then bring something to you guys that I think will be good and we can move forward. But yes, Title 16 definitely needs some work and it is on my to-do list.
Jay, would you like to, do you have anything you want to come up and speak to us about?
Yes, a few things.
Okay.
Honorable Mayor and City Councilman, thank you for taking the time to address this issue. And Danielle, thank you for your help. Danielle does well working with the public. I hope you read Title 16. That's really critical to me. Property, the request I'd like to rewrite, I did not write the request. The request is to take Title 16 out of the requirements to do an RV park. Simply, not for my project, not for any other specific project. Title 16 does not apply to RV parks. And I don't know if it's an aside, Amy, you said there was a project built fully concurrent with Title 16 that's an RV park.
I didn't say fully concurrent, I said that follows the requirements of 16.
What project could that be that even came close?
I believe staff has KOA, was that?
Yeah, and the KOA did have a little bit of a different process. RV parks were actually not permitted at the time that it was constructed, so they also went through a special use permit. And then they did go through their development plan with staff. I don't have all of the information on that. There's numerous files that I was able to find, and I did bring the small file, so I wasn't carrying a box, but so they did have some different regulations at the time that they went through it, but they did follow 16 and get a special use for the use at that time not being permitted. It is permitted now. So that at this point, it would not be a question of Jay needing a special use permit.
Okay, thank you. If you read Title 16 and you drive through KOA, you'll see no resemblance. Title 16 is a residential subdivision. It's a manufactured home subdivision. Whether the government owns the streets or not is not real clear. There's no dedication required, but there's all the requirements for the city to go in and have sewer, water, drainage plans, bonding. I don't even know how bonding works when somebody's building their own subdivision, no public infrastructure in place, and they have to bond it to the city. So if you die in the middle of your project, you draw the bond and build the guy's project even though he died. There's nowhere in our ordinances where you're bonding your own property. That's required in here. Manufactured home is purely residential. RVs are only allowed in C2, highway business. The property, if the property is zoned right, an RV park is permitted. There's a lot of items here. If it's a variance procedure, I'm not interested because there's so many things in this. There would be 30-some variances if we're going to do a variance, and I'm not sure any one of them would meet the requirements of some very unusual gas line that's in the way sort of thing. It's just something like, I don't think the project should put TV to every lot. That's a variance. So to take 30 variances, 35 people, it's an ordinance that just does not fit RVs. And I would ask that the city council just state that in a resolution that Title 16 does not apply to RV parks. And if you'd like, we can take our Title 16, go through page by page, and you say, this doesn't apply, this doesn't apply, this doesn't apply. And can you even find anything in the back of Title 16 that truly makes an RV park a better place because of the regulation? So I think we're wasting a lot of time. I have a little bit of history where that came from. You know, the city has adopted the infrastructure in Cottonwood. That was never built. The city streets, no intention. Why that ever happened, I don't know. We as a city should not have gotten that situation. I also know there were times, you guys have all been around, Jackie's a little new here, but been around long enough to see how many times were we gonna explode with population. 5, 6 times over the last 30 or 40 years. Big fear, we're gonna get big mobile home parks that look like some of our present mobile home parks. Rush, let's get Title 16 in here so we've got nice mobile home parks, curb, gutter, sidewalk, etc. That's the history on this thing. So it doesn't do anything to RV parks. I think RV parks are one of the best solutions that we have to the impending housing problems that we could have had in the past. Motel rooms not available. Who's going to build an apartment building for a construction force? Who's going to build permanent housing for a construction force? There are people that will build RV parks to handle, and there's more people living in RVs that are working construction now than there ever been in the past. We have a lot of construction coming up in this area. It's a super appropriate housing alternative. And I contend if you really read this, we're not going to get any RV parks that meet this requirement. And it's simple because this doesn't even talk about RV parks. RV parks are in C2 zone. That's where they're allowed. Commercial zone, highway business zone. That's where they're allowed. This is residential. So I think it's an easy move for the city to say RV parks don't apply to manufactured homes. And if they wanted to write a quick resolution or a regulation for RV parks, if there's some real important things that we need to do to RV parks, write it. But the path we're on right now, we're not going to get this changed very fast. We're not going to get people complying with it. And in clear conscience, I can't ask for a variance because none of these problems are a problem with the property. They're a problem with the regulation that we are being asked to concur with. I'm finished. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Jay? Councilman Smith?
Jay, I haven't read the commercial C2 in quite some time, obviously. Can you build under a C2?
Under C2,
Because it's a store, and it's an RV park that you rent out. So
well, we're talking, yeah, my project would be something like that. But as far as C2, that's a zone, you know, instead of RD 7500, it's C2. And C2 goes through and lists specifically what you can do in a C2 zone. What you can do that's principally permitted, meaning just go do it, or conditionally permitted, where you need a conditional use permit, like daycare and residential. It clearly goes through and RV park, it's not campground or anything else, RV park, principally permitted. You would think you just go down and buy a building permit, meet all the codes, meet all the regulations, and build your project, whatever it may be, if it's principally permitted.
Mayor, I think this council has been put into a bind here. And it's because I think we need to follow our own ordinances, but our ordinances are not applicable. And so I think we need to change it, but I don't want to hold you up from building. And I sympathize with that, but I think we can't do anything if our ordinances doesn't allow us.
I would like to look into, you know, it doesn't allow it. What's the strength of that? Danielle, you mentioned that somewhere in 16 it talked about RV park. I hadn't seen campgrounds and what,
yes.
You read that. Where is that?
It's, I have it pulled up too. 16.16.020. Any person desiring to operate a manufactured or mobile home park or a RV park shall make written application for a license on forms provided by the zoning officer. And then just goes to say.
That's the only place that RV is mentioned, and they're just talking about licensing. If you want an RV park, you need to get a license for it. It doesn't say that RV parks have to be built to Title 16. It isn't even in the description of terms. The term RV park is described in Title, in C2 zone.
So why couldn't you take that portion of this ordinance and make it a separate, like you said, through a resolution, make it a separate issue? It wouldn't tie into Title 16.
So you guys can do what you want, the proper way, and I'm willing to do this, and I guess if you guys tell me that I need to work on this tomorrow, I will do that. I'm asking you guys to be patient with me because I have a lot of things on my plate. The proper way would be to go through 3 readings and have an ordinance, because it is an ordinance. So that's what I am proposing to do, but what I'm asking is not to do it in Jay's timeframe. I'm asking for some time to get some of these big projects that I have on my plate right now completed, so that I can give Title 16 the proper attention that it deserves, and that way I don't bring you guys something that is a half job, not complete, that I'm just kind of throwing at you and then have to go back later and amend.
So, let me ask you, Jay, what's your time frame on this? Is this something that you've got in the works that you wanna get moving on this fall?
Well, to be
Something, yeah?
completely honest with you, we thought we were gonna build an RV park 2 years ago, and we ran into this problem. The project fell apart. So what do? Try and solve the problem before you've got a viable project. We do not have a viable project. This may never happen, but I don't think the property is marketable with Title 16 hanging over its head.
Okay.
So
with that being said, would you be willing to allow us the time to relook at this 16, and so that we're able to relook at our own ordinance there, and then be able to come up with something, make the changes that we see need to be changed, and then get back with you?
well, it's easy time-wise to say yes. The fear is how much of this is gonna carry over to an RV park, because if a fraction of it carries over, I don't feel an RV park's viable.
Well, that's for the governing body, the planning and zoning commission, to determine whether or not it's a reasonable requirement. But you can't be dictated to by one citizen as to what the law
Right.
will look like in the
Right,
future.
we'd have to review it and see if it does, if everybody agrees that nothing in there does pertain to this, then it would make sense to make sure it's separated. But only after review of it and the understanding and everybody involved to come up with that decision.
And that's where, too, when I work on this, I have every intention of going to see what other communities do. You know, what has worked for them? Are they hitting RV parks? Have people complied and not had issues? Have they had issues? And look at all of those things too. Because I mean, I can make something up, but that doesn't mean, you know, this is really the first RV park that's come before the city since I've been employed here. So it wouldn't be fair for me not to look up and see, I mean, why recreate what's already successful for somebody else?
Yeah, this particular ordinance, it looks like it hasn't even been amended since 2005. So it's been in place. There hasn't been a request by any developers
At least 15 years.
for remedies or requests. The last time the city worked diligently or hastily with a developer, you see the remnants of it south of Rawlins with heavy equipment that's gathering dust and hurt and discontent feelings because of that. I do believe that the city has a responsibility to work with developers and its citizens to try and find middle ground so that it's not cost prohibitive to develop in Rawlins. But I also think it's important for staff and the citizens to have safeguards in place to make sure that we are requiring the bare minimum of what's necessary.
So I guess my recommendation would be to withdraw the motion and let it die, and then we work to try to let's look at this and clean it up. Whether it will clean up to fit what you're looking for, but at least allow us to look at it and possibly make some changes.
And to look at other things that are in conflict with what we have, so it impedes development. I think we need to eliminate those roadblocks and have a little bit more of a smoother road for folks. But I do appreciate the fact that you are bringing these kinds of issues to us today, because we don't see it. We're dealing with other things. It's not
Well, we definitely don't want to stop somebody from building.
Well, I think, the final answer is to have a regulation that's applicable. Of course, I feel like in any planning, there is a tendency to overdo. Again, I'm on county planning commission, that it's like if there weren't any regulations, developers would just ruin everything. Competitiveness is kind of the bottom line. If you don't build something that's desirable, you're not gonna make it. So don't go out there and waste your money and fail. So when we write regulations, the 16 is a real example of it. Somebody rushed this through, they took a piece from here and a piece from there, and said, there, now we won't have any more shoddy RV parks. That's what happened. And, builders don't build trash. The market keeps them honest. There are some things that do apply, no question about it. In our building permit, well, you see in Title 16, I listed there's a number of regulations you have to follow, lot size and things like that. But we don't go overboard. If we got a problem or we anticipate a problem, let's get it in the resolution so that it's covered, so there's no question about it. Long range, I think it'd be extremely valuable for Rawlins to have a good, solid RV park regulation for everybody, for every project. It's not my project, because then things can move forward. You gotta read the thing and think about even our RV park KOA, nice, I sold the land, I was a party to that. It doesn't come close to meeting this thing. And what happened, different council, different time, all of that, who knows, we don't have to answer for that. But as we move forward, let's get something workable.
Okay. Councilman Smith?
In the interest of, if we were not to pass this, then it's a year before this can be brought up again, I think. And so in the interest of getting this moving forward, I would withdraw my motion.
Okay. And I would withdraw my second, providing that we start working on it as soon as we can.
That's fine.
Point of order, we do have someone that would like to speak, representing KOA.
Okay. Marilyn, would you like to? I was getting to you. Yeah, sorry. Yes, please.
Honorable Mayor and Council, I've been listening to all of this, and first thing I want to let you all know, the KOA was built in 1997, prior to this title being revised or maybe even put in place. I don't know, Danielle has that information, I haven't gone back that far in this information, but with regards to, I think there's a challenge here with verbiage in this title. And camping park, they probably were called camping parks at one point in time. Now they've changed names to be called an RV park. So I think that it's a matter of semantics in regards to that. But I've gone through this title, I've read it through. There are several things in here that I've highlighted that actually address RV parks or camping parks, however you want to call them. But I've gone through here and I would beg to differ. My KOA meets all regulations that were put in place prior to the amendments of this particular ordinance. The only thing that I can see, and I've gone through with restrooms and showers and the whole 9 yards. I mean, individual buildings, sizes of the RV sites, the electric, the sewer, everything on this. And my RV park does meet all of the standards that are required for an RV park or a manufacturer, or this particular title. The only thing that I will say that it does not meet, and I don't know that this was a requirement at the time that the RV park was built, and that is the paved drives. And I'm assuming that, and Daniel, you could probably clarify this for me, because again, we bought in 2009, the park was built in 1997. I don't know what happened prior to 2009, but I will say that, you know, the size of KOA corporate built this park. So I'm sure that they did their due diligence and they knew exactly what they were doing, and they followed all regulations at the time when the park was built. We're about the 5th owner of the park since it was built in 1997. We've had it for 11 years. The only thing, what I was going to say is the paved roads in the park. That would be the only thing in this particular iteration of the ordinance that it does not meet. I would say that, you know, I have 3 acres that adjoins Jay's property. There's a fence between us from my park, then 3 acres, and then Jay's property. If we were to build out that 3 acres, we would be required to comply with all of this. And so I'm you know, tent trailer, travel trailer, tents, truck campers, those are all RVs or tents. And so this does pertain to RV parks and to camping parks. So I would entertain any questions from any of you if you'd like to ask.
Actually, it's information.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you.
I think it's a good addition to the neighborhood.
Oh, thank you. We're trying.
Okay, council's pleasure.
I withdraw.
Okay. Jay?
Can I respond to Marilyn's comments?
Yes.
And this might not be an issue, but possibly Marilyn said she concurs, her project concurs with this Title 16, and you don't have tie downs. Tie downs are in here, ding upon it.
I didn't say the whole thing complies. I said that my park was built prior to this title was done, and there are certain things in there that it does not comply with because it was grandfathered in when those were done.
Great, thank you. That's the point that I wanted to make, because I think that the KOA was fully compliant in 1997. This is a whole different animal here, and I'm sure that a lot of the KOA, I think the KOA is an excellent project. I think it's exactly what a park should be built to. I think if you rewrite the ordinance, it should kind of shadow what has been done at KOA. That's not what's in here, though.
Okay. Thank you, Jay. So right now, we do not have a motion on the floor, so this will die of lack of motion. We'll move on down to item K, approval of the joint resolution authorizing the Carbon County Treasurer to make an initial distribution of $1,524,249.26.
Skip Jay.
Do what?
Skip.
Oh, Jay. And I spit all that out. I was also. All right, we'll move back to item J to approve an amendment of Rawlins Municipal Code, Chapter 1, penalties for violations of incarceration. Can I get a motion? Councilman Sanger?
I move to approve the first reading of the suggested wording changes, specifically section 1.08.010 C of Chapter 1, penalties for violation 9.04.010, disobeying a lawful order, and 9.16.020, breach of peace, E and F.
Thank you. Okay, we have a first and a second. Amy, I see that Troy had to leave, so I presume you're going to fill us in.
I am. Our thoughts and prayers to Chief Palmer, as his daughter is in the hospital. So send her thoughtful prayers for healing. Wyoming Statute 15.1.103 permits municipalities to adopt ordinances necessary for the health and safety of the citizenry. Wyoming Statute 56101 provides the statutory authority for incorporated cities or towns, whether by general charter or general act, now in existence or hereafter, to have a municipal court for the trial of all offenses arising under the ordinances of the city or town. And 151117 states that amendments of ordinances or sections thereof shall be by ordinance. An amending ordinance shall set forth the entire ordinance. In this instance, the police department is just presenting you with a housekeeping issue. They are asking you to amend Rawlins Municipal Code 1.08010, penalties for violations. These are the enumerated violations that authorize incarceration or jail. And what they're requesting is that you limit those to 9.04010, disobeying a lawful order, and 9.16020, breach of peace, E&F, public intoxication, and peeping Tom for the city. There are a number of other offenses that require incarceration, but the state statute, there's an equivalent state statute for those cases. In this instance, these are the only three where there is not another state statute that they could cite to.
Any questions? Okay. If there's no questions, Sherry, would you open online voting, please?
Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes.
I don't know what happened, but that cut out the whole thing. Is it reasonable if I abstain on this because I could not hear what she just said, and then on the second reading I can ask any relevant questions?
Yes, that would be acceptable.
Thank you.
Online voting is closed, and the motion carries with 6 yeas and Councilmember Durst abstaining.
Okay. And that's the first reading. We'll have 2 more readings on that change. Now we'll move on now to item K, correct? And this will be for a joint resolution authorizing the Carbon County Treasurer to make an initial distribution of $1,524,249.26 in the 2009 Pacific Purpose Sales Tax and Exercise Tax collection to Carbon County and its municipalities. Thank you, Councilwoman Wells.
I move to approve the joint resolution authorizing the Carbon County Treasurer to make an initial distribution of $1,524,249.26 in 2019 specific purpose sales and excise tax collections to Carbon County and its municipalities.
Councilwoman Smith seconds. Okay. Dustin, fill us in.
2 weeks ago, I provided this council with an update from our latest specific purpose tax meeting. One of the discussions that was had there was this board currently sits on about 3.5 million of collected sales tax for this purpose. We had multiple organizations that were trying to start projects, and they do have some bills rolling in. We are working on the bonding issue as well, which is taking some time due to various reasons, including COVID. And one of the things that the board agreed to was going back to the individual councils and commission to do a partial disbursement of that to help cover some of these bills. So as of July 1st, we had about 3.5 million there. We want to take the amount listed about 1.5 million and disperse it out based on percentages for the projects and estimated numbers, and just get that money flowing out to them so they can start covering some of these bills. The City of Rawlins is in a unique position. We are not a bonded entity, so we have the time. We didn't have to rush, and we are not planning on beginning our projects until next spring anyway, so we have the time, so it wasn't urgent for us. But one of the discussions we had in the meeting was one entity in particular wanted to take their whole share out of all this money. And I argued against that each of the municipalities needed to also get their fair share. And if we are going to do a distribution, it's going to be based on the percentages, not another entity's need for all the money. In this distribution, the city of Rawlins received approximately $355,000. The July sales tax distribution that we had was very significant. So this specific purpose tax is running really well. But we're still working on bonding, and once that's all completed, all the distributions will happen on a monthly basis. This is simply for getting the money out there, getting them started, and cover some of the bills they have.
Okay. Any questions for Dustin? Sherry, would you open the line, please?
Online voting is closed and the motion carries with 7 yeas.
Thank you, Sherry. Now move on down to item 9, executive session. Councilwoman Smith.
Okay. I move that we go into executive session at 8:51 p.m. pursuant to Wyoming statute 164452 to consider the appointment, employment, right to practice or dismissal of a public officer, professional person or employee, or to hear complaints or charges brought against an employee, professional person or officer, unless the employee, professional person or officer requests a public hearing. The governing body may exclude from any public or private hearing during the examination of a witness any or all other witnesses in the matter being investigated. Following the hearing or executive session, the governing body may deliberate on its decision in executive session. 3, on matters concerning litigation to which the governing body is a party or proposed litigation to which the governing body may be a party. And 9, to consider or receive any information classified as confidential by law.
Okay, thank you. Can we get a second?
I'll second. I'll second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Councilman Sanger beats Linda Barry.
Okay.
If there's no objections to that motion, Sherry, would you open online voting, please?
Online voting is closed and the motion carries with 6 yeas and Councilmember Espinoza abstaining.
Excuse me. All right, thank you, Sherry.